Forget Hollywood. Forget the tailored suits and the Tommy guns. The most feared mobster in American history wasn't killed by a rival gang. He wasn't even destroyed by the government. He was eaten alive from the inside out. In his final years, the man who once ruled Chicago was reduced to a terrified, babbling shell, screaming at ghosts in the night and casting a fishing line into an empty swimming pool. This is the dark, deeply unsettling reality of Al Capone's final days. The Invisible Killer. Capone's real killer didn't carry a gun. It was a microscopic bacterium he contracted as a teenager, almost certainly while working as a bouncer in a Chicago brothel. His first job in crime. His first and most fatal mistake. He knew about the infection early, but treatment involved painful arsenic injections, and the mob boss was apparently too afraid to seek help. So he ignored it. For over a decade, the disease quietly multiplied. Syphilis has a third stage most people never reach. It's called neurosyphilis. The bacteria breaches the blood-brain barrier and literally consumes brain tissue. While the public saw Capone as the genius emperor of the underworld, his brain had already begun to rot. The violent mood swings, the creeping paranoia. It wasn't arrogance, it was the disease. But the government didn't know that yet. They just knew they needed to break him. Prisoner number 85. When Capone arrived at Alcatraz in August 1934, he thought he could work the system. He was wrong. Alcatraz was built specifically to solve the Capone problem. Before this, he had turned Atlanta Penitentiary into a private resort with guards on his payroll. But Warden Johnston at Alcatraz had one standard for everyone. Capone arrived grinning. Within days, that grin was gone. He was assigned prisoner number 85, a 9 by 5 foot cell. Mopping floors, scrubbing shower rooms, no negotiating. For the first time in his life, Al Capone had zero power over his environment. The most feared man in America was now folding other men's shirts. But the humiliation of a mop and bucket was nothing compared to what waited in the barber's chair. Scissors in the haircut line. Without his money and hitmen, Capone became a target. One day, standing in line waiting for a haircut, another inmate exchanged words with him, then stabbed him with a pair of barber's shears. The wound was minor, but the message was clear. Prison legends say Capone fought back. It makes for a great movie scene, but it's a lie. The documented truth is much more devastating. The man who ordered the St. Valentine's Day massacre was stabbed with scissors in a haircut line, and there was nothing he could do about it. To survive this terrifying new reality, the mob boss had to find a place to hide. The prison musician. To escape the brutal hierarchy of Alcatraz, Capone found music. He joined the prison band, playing banjo and mandola. He practiced seriously and actually got good. He even began composing original pieces in his cell. One was a love song written for his wife, May, who had stayed faithful through every scandal. There is something deeply strange about this image. The same hands that signed death warrants were now quietly picking banjo strings in the corner of a prison yard, while other inmates walked past without looking. But while Capone played the banjo, the disease in his blood was preparing its most terrifying phase. The malaria injection. By the mid-1930s, the mood swings and confusion could no longer be hidden. Capone began talking to himself. Prison doctors tried a desperate, legitimate medical treatment of the era, injecting him with the malaria virus. The theory was that extreme fever would kill the syphilis bacteria. It nearly killed him instead. They tried it twice, and both times Capone barely survived. It didn't work. In February 1938, doctors formally diagnosed him with syphilis of the brain. In November 1939, prisoner 85 was released early, not because he had reformed, but because there was almost nothing left of him. And what little remained of his mind was about to become a very dark place. The Ghost of James Clark. As his brain deteriorated, the night terrors began. Guards at Alcatraz and later his family in Florida reported Capone waking in absolute panic, begging someone to leave him alone. He was screaming for a man named Jimmy, James "Jimmy" Clark was one of the 7 men gunned down on Capone's direct orders during the St. Valentine's Day massacre. The neurosyphilis was destroying the part of his brain that controls fear and rational thought. Hallucinations took over. Whether it was true guilt or the random terror of a dying brain, Al Capone spent his final years being hunted by the ghosts of his victims. Rejected by the best. By the time he was released, he was so broken that not even the greatest doctors wanted to touch him. Johns Hopkins Hospital simply locked their doors. His legacy was so soaked in blood that America's finest medical institution decided he wasn't worth the PR nightmare. He settled for a smaller clinic in Baltimore. Grateful for their care, Capone donated 2 Japanese weeping cherry trees to the hospital when he left. They still stand today. The man who buried his rivals in concrete left behind weeping cherry trees. It was the ultimate surrender. With nowhere else to go, he retreated to his final prison. The fake boss. Capone returned to his beautiful Palm Island estate in Florida. But to keep him calm, his family created an illusion. They pretended he was still in charge. Associates visited to give fake briefings on operations that had dissolved years ago. They played along, calling him boss. Capone would sit in his study holding whispered conversations and conducting mob meetings with empty chairs. His family sealed the estate from the outside world. They were no longer hiding a dangerous man. They were hiding a broken one. And behind those walls, his daily routine became purely surreal. Fishing in the pool. The daily reality of Capone's life in Florida was something no film has ever shown. Dressed in a bathrobe, the former king of the Chicago underworld would spend hours sitting beside his luxurious swimming pool, holding a fishing rod, casting his line into the chlorinated water, waiting for fish that weren't there and never would be. It became a quiet daily ritual his family learned not to interrupt. The man who once commanded a billion-dollar empire, fishing in water that contained absolutely nothing. If there's a single image that captures what became of Al Capone, that is it. The cure that came too late. In 1942, penicillin became widely available. A few simple injections could now completely cure syphilis. Al Capone was one of the first civilian patients in America to receive it, but it was far too late to repair the massive holes already eaten into his brain. If penicillin had existed 10 years earlier, the mental collapse never would have happened. He still would have gone to prison, but he would have died as himself. Instead, when his heart finally stopped in January 1947, his funeral was heavily guarded and closed to the public out of shame. The mob didn't want the world to see that their greatest legend had died with the mind of a 12-year-old child. His real sentence wasn't 11 years in federal prison. His real sentence was everything that came after.